Hi guys, today I'm going to be reading you guys the fourth chapter of Percy Jackson, the Lightning Thief. And today I'll just be giving you guys a couple of multiple choice questions about the chapter. Okay. We tore through the night along dark country roads. Wind slammed against the Camaro. Rain lashed the windshield. I don't know how my mom could see anything, but she kept her foot on the gas. Every time there was a flash of lightning, I looked at Grover sitting next to me in the back seat, and I wondered if I'd gone insane, or if he'd wearing some kind of shag carpet trousers, but no. The smell was one I remember from kindergarten field trip to the petting zoo. Lanolin, like from wool. The smell of a wet barnyard animal. All I could think to say was, "So you and my mum know each other?" Grover's eyes flitted to the rearview mirror, though there were no cars behind us. "Not exactly," he said. "I mean, we never met in person, but she knew I was watching you, watching me, keeping tabs on you, making sure you were okay. But I wasn't being your, but I wasn't faking being your friend." He added hastily, "I am your friend." What are you exactly? Th- that doesn't matter right now. It doesn't matter. From the waist down, my best friend is a donkey. Grover let out a sharp, throaty blah ha ha. I've heard him make that sound before, but I always assumed it was a nervous laugh. Now I realized it was a more of an irritated bleat. "Goat!" he cried. "What?" "I'm a goat from the waist down. You just said it didn't matter. Blah ha ha. There are satyrs who would trample you under hoof for such an insult." Whoa. Wait. Satyrs? You mean like Mr. Brunner's myth? Were those old ladies at a fruit stand a myth, Percy? Was Miss Dodds a myth? "So you admit there was a Miss Dodds, of course. Then why?" "The less you know, the fewer monsters you attract," Grover said. "Like that should be perfectly obvious. We put mist over the human eyes. We hoped you'd realize the kindly one was a hallucination, but it was no good. You started to realize who you are." "Who I? Wait a minute. What do you mean?" The weird bellowing noise rose up again somewhere behind us, closer than before. Whatever was chasing was still on our trail. "Percy," my mom said, "there's too much to explain and not enough time. We have to get you to safety." "Safety from what?" "Who's after me?" "Oh, nobody much," Grover said, obviously still miffed about the donkey comment. "Just the Lord of the Dead and a few of his blood-thirstiest minions." "Grover!" "Sorry, Miss Jackson. Could you drive faster, please?" I tried to wrap my mind around what was happening, but I couldn't do it. I knew this wasn't a dream. I had no imagination. I could never dream up something this weird. My mom made a hard left. We swerved onto a narrower road, racing past darkened farmhouses and wooded hills and pick your own strawberry signs on white picket fences. "Where are we going?" I asked. "The summer camp I told you about." My mother's voice was tight. She was trying for my sake not to be scared. "The place your father wanted to send you." "The place you didn't want me to go." "Please, dear," my mother begged. "This is hard enough. Try to understand. You're in danger because some old ladies cut your arm." "Those weren't old ladies," Grover said. "Those were the fates. Do you know what it means? The fact that they appeared in front of you? They only do that when you're about to, when someone's about to die." "Whoa, you said you." "No, I didn't. I said someone." "You meant you, as in me." "I meant you, like someone, not you." "Boys," my mom said. She pulled the wheel hard to the right, and I got a glimpse of a figure she swerved to avoid. A dark, fluttering shape now lost behind us in the storm. "What was that?" I asked. "We're almost there," my mother said, ignoring my question. "Another mile. Please, please, please." I don't know what there was, but I found myself leaning forward in the car, anticipating, waiting us to arrive. Outside, nothing but rain and darkness, the kind of empty countryside you could get way out of on the tip of Long Island. I thought about Miss Dodds, in the moment when she changed into the thing with pointed teeth and leathery wings. My limbs went numb from delayed shock. She really hadn't been human. She'd meant to kill me. Then I thought Mr. Brunner and the sword he had thrown me. Before I could ask Grover about it, the hair rose on the back of my neck. There was a blinding flash, a jaw-rattling boom, and our car exploded. I remember feeling weightless, like I was being crushed, fried, and hosed down all at the same time. I peeled my forehead off the back of the driver's seat and said, "Ow." Percy, my mom shouted. I'm okay. I tried to shake off the daze. I wasn't dead. The car hadn't really exploded. We swerved into a ditch. Our driver's side doors were wedged in the mud. The roof had cracked open like an eggshell and rain was pouring in. Lightning. That was the only explanation. We'd been blasted right off the road. Next to me in the backseat was a big, motionless lump. Grover! He was slumped over, blood trickling from the side of his mouth. I shook his forehead, thinking, no, even if you are a half barnyard animal, you're my best friend, and I don't want you to die. Then he groaned, food, and I knew there was hope. Percy, my mother said, we have to. Her voice faltered. I looked back. In a flash of lightning, through the mud splattered rear windshield, I saw a figure lumbering toward us on the shoulder of the road. The sight of it made my skin crawl. It was a dark silhouette of a huge guy, like a football player. He seemed to be holding a blanket over his head. His top half was bulky and fuzzy. His upward hands raised made it look like he had horns. I swallowed hard. Who is Percy? My mother said, deadly serious. Get out of the car. My mother threw herself against the driver's side door. It was jammed shut in the mud. I tried. Mine stuck too. I looked up desperately at the hole in the roof. It might have been exit, but the edges were sizzling and smoking. Climb out on the passenger side, Percy. My mother told me, Percy, you have to run. Do you see that big tree? What? Another flash of lightning, and through the smoking hole in the roof, I saw the tree she meant. A huge white house Christmas tree-sized pine at the crest of the nearest hill. That's the property line. Get over that hill and you'll see a big farmhouse down in the valley. Run and don't look back. Yell for help. Don't stop until you reach the door. Mom, you're coming too. Her face was pale, her eyes as sad as when she looked at the ocean. No, I shouted. You are coming with me. Help me carry Grover. Food, Grover moaned a little louder. The man with the blanket on his head kept coming toward us, making his grunting, snoring noises. As he got closer, I realized he couldn't be hanging a blanket over his hand because his hands, huge, meaty hands, were swinging at his sides. There was no blanket, meaning the bulky, fuzzy mass that was too big to be his head was his head, and the points that looked like his horns. He doesn't want us, my mother told me. He wants you. Besides, I can't cross the property line. But we don't have time, Percy. Go, please. I got mad, then mad at my brother, at Grover the goat, at the thing that horns that was lumbering toward us slowly and deliberately like a bull. I climbed across Grover and pushed the door open to the rain. We're going together. Come on, Mom. I told you, Mom, I am not leaving you. Help me with Grover. I didn't wait for an answer. I scrambled outside, dragging Grover from the car. He was surprisingly light, but I couldn't have carried him far if my mother hadn't come to my aid. Together, we draped Grover's arm over our shoulders and started stumbling uphill through wet, waist-high grass. Glancing back, I got my first clear look at the monster. He was 7 feet tall, easy. His arms and legs were something from the cover of M- M- Muscle Man magazine, bulging biceps and triceps, and a bunch of other seps, all stuffed like basketballs, baseballs under vein webbed skin. He wore no clothes except underwear. I mean, bright white fruit of the looms, which would have been funny except for the top half of his body. Coarse brown hair started about his belly button and got thicker as it reached his shoulders. His neck was a mass of muscle and fur leading up to its enormous head, which had a snout as long as my arm, snotty nostrils with a gleaming brass ring, cruel black eyes and horns, enormous black and white horns with points you just couldn't get from an electric sharpener. I recognized the monster all right. He had been in one of the first stories Mr. Brenner told us, but he couldn't be real. I blinked the rain out of my eyes. That's Pacify's son, my mother said. I wish I know how badly they want to kill you. But he's a min don't say his name, she warned. Names have power. The pine tree was still way too far, 100 meters uphill at least. I glanced behind me again. The bald man hunched over our car, looking in the windows, or not looking exactly, more like snuffling, nuzzling. I wasn't sure why he bothered, since we were only about 15 meters away. Food? Grover moaned. Shh, I told him. Mom, what's he doing? Doesn't he see us? His sight and hearing are terrible, she said. He goes by smell, but he'll figure out where we are soon. As if on cue, the bullman bellowed in rage. He picked up Gabe's Camaro by the torn roof, the chases creaking and groaning. He raised the car over his head and threw it down the road. It slammed into the wet asphalt and skidded into a shower of sparks for about half a mile before coming to a stop. The gas tank exploded. Not a scratch, I remembered Gabe saying. Oops. Percy, my mom said. When he sees us, he'll charge. Cling to the last second, then jump out of the way, directly sideways. He can't change direction very well once he's charging. Do you understand? How do you know all this? I've been worrying about an attack for a long time. I should have expected this. I was selfish, keeping me near you. But another bellow of rage, and the bullman started tromping uphill. He smelled us. The pine tree was only a few more meters, but the hill was getting steeper and slicker, and Grover wasn't getting any lighter. The bullman closed in. Another few seconds he'd be on top of us. My mother must have been exhausted, but she shouldered Grover. Go, Percy, separate. Remember what I said. I didn't want to split up, but I had a feeling she was right. It was our only chance. I sprinted to the left, turned, and saw the creature bearing down on me. His black eyes glowed with hate. He reeked like rotten meat. He lowered his head and charged, those razor-sharp horns aimed straight at my chest. The fear in my stomach made me want to bolt, but that wouldn't work. I could never outrun this thing. So I held my ground, and at the last moment I jumped to the side. The bowman stormed past like a freight train, then bellowed with frustration and turned, but not toward me this time, toward my mother, who was setting Grover down in the grass. We'd reached the crest of the hill. Down the other side I could see a valley, just as my mom had said, and the lights of a farmhouse glowing yellow through the rain. But that was half a mile away. We'd never make it. The bowman grunted, pawing the ground. He kept eyeing my mother, who was now retreating slowly downhill, back towards the road, trying to lead the monster away from Grover. But I just stood there, frozen in fear, as the monster tried her. She tried to sidestep, as she told me to do, but the monster had learned his lesson. His hand shot out, grabbed her by the neck as she tried to get away. He lifted her as if she struggled, kicking and pummeling the air. Mom! She caught my eyes, managed to choke out one last word. Go! Then with the angry roar, the monster closed his fist around my mother's neck, and she dissolved before my eyes, melting into light, a shimmering golden form as if she were a holographic projection. A blinding flash, and she was simply gone. No! Anger replaced my fear. Newfound strength burned in my limbs, the same rush of energy I got when Miss Dodds grew talent. The bowman bore down on Grover, who lay helplessly in the grass. The monster hunched over, sniffing my best friend as if he were about to lift Grover up and make him dissolve too. I couldn't allow that. I stripped off my red jacket. Hey, I screamed, waving the jacket, running to one side of the monster. Hey, stupid! Ground beef! Rawr! The monster turned toward me, shaking his meaty fist. I had an idea. A stupid idea, but better than no idea at all. I pulled my back to the big pine tree and waved my jacket in front of the bowman, thinking I'd jump out of the way at the last moment. But it didn't happen like that. The bowman charged too fast, his arms out to grab me whichever way I tried to dodge. Time slowed down. My legs tense. I couldn't jump sideways, so I leaped straight up, kicking out from the creature's head, using it as a springboard, turning in midair and landing on his neck. How did I do that? I didn't have time to find out. Mi- millisecond later, the monster's head slammed into a tree, and the impact nearly knocked my teeth out. The bullman staggered around, trying to shake me. I locked my arms around his horns to keep from being thrown. Thunder and lightning were still going strong. The rain was in my eyes. The smell of rotten meat burned my nostrils. The monster shook himself around and bucked like a rodeo bull. He should have just backed up in a tree and smashed me flat, but I was starting to realize that this thing had only one gear, forward. Meanwhile, Grover started groaning in the grass. I wanted to yell at him to shut up, but the way I was getting tossed around, if I opened my mouth, I'd bite my own tongue off. Food, Grover moaned. The bowman wheeled toward him, pawed the ground again, and got ready to charge. I thought about how he had squeezed the life out of my mother, made her disappear in a flash of light. The rage filled me like high-octane fuel. I got both hands around one arm and pulled back with all my might. The monster tensed, gave a surprised grunt, then snapped. The bowman screamed and flung me across the air. I landed flat on my back in the grass. My head smacked against a rock. When I sat up, my vision was blurry, but I had a horn in my hands, a ragged bone weapon the size of a knife. The monster charged. Without thinking, I rolled to one side and came up kneeling as the monster barreled past. I drove the broken horn into his side, right up his furry rib cage. The bowman roared in agony. He flailed, clawing at his chest, then began to disintegrate. Not like my mother in a flash of golden light, but like crumbling sand, blowing away in chucks and winds. The same way Miss Dodds had burst apart. The monster was gone. The rain had stopped, and the storm was still rumbling, bawling in the distance. I smelled like livestock, and my knees were shaking. My head felt like it had been splitting open. I was weak and scared and trembling with grief. I just seen my mother vanish. I wanted to lie down and cry. But there was Grover, needing my help, so I managed to haul him up and stagger down into the valley toward the light of the farmhouse. I was crying, calling for my mother, but I held on to Grover. I wasn't going to let him go. The last thing I remember was collapsing on a wooden porch, looking up at a ceiling fan circling above me, moss flying around in yellow light, and the stern faces of a familiar-looking bearded man and a pretty girl. Her blonde hair curled like Cinderella's. They both looked down at me, and the girl said, "He's the one. You must be." "Silence, Annabeth," the man said. "He's still conscious. Bring him inside." Okay, that was the chapter 4 of The Lightning Thief. This is a summary. While driving away from the storm, Percy notices a creature following them in the distance. He questions Grover and Sally's relationship and what kind of animal Grover is. Grover explains that he's a satyr in charge of protecting Percy, but the less he knows, the fewer monsters he will attract. Sally begins driving Percy to the camp for protection, after learning that the three old women Percy encountered were the Fates. The car swerved into a ditch which injured Grover. Sally encourages Percy to get help by running past a big tree that marks the property line to safety. He refuses to leave without her and Grover, despite the creature that is steadily creeping up on them. Sally and Percy finally pull Grover out of the car and head toward the tree. Outside of the car, Percy recognizes the monster as half bull, half man. He starts to name the monster, but his Percy warns him that names have power. She advised him to jump to the side if the creature attacks, since a bull cannot change directions easily. Percy does so when the bull charges, anchors the monster. The monster then attacks his mother and Grover, who are on the side of the road. The bull man grabs Percy's mother by the neck, and she disappears in the golden light. Furious, Percy defeats the monster by tearing off one of the monster's horns and shoving it into the monster's ribs. Percy helped Grover to safety, and the two pass out on the porch of a farmhouse after a young girl recognizes him as the one. Okay, this is the first multiple choice questions. If you guys need more time, you guys can pause the video if you need more time, and at the end, I will give you guys answers. So the first multiple choice, how is Grover different from in chapter 4? A, he has cloven hooves. B, he has a horn. C, he has unicorn hooves. And D, he is the same. Multiple choice question 2. What is Grover officially? A dog, B, a human, C, a satire, or D, a goat? Multiple choice question 3. Where are Percy, Mom, and Grover going? A summer camp in the woods, B, a boarding school, C, upstate New York, or D, the grocery store? Multiple choice question 4. What responsibility does Grover have? A, Grover has to watch over Percy. B, Grover says he is his brother. C, Grover claims he has to take him somewhere. D, Grover says he has to keep him safe. What monster does Percy face? A, a satire. B, Godzilla. C, Bigfoot. Or D, Minotaur? Multiple choice question 6. What happens to Percy's mom after the Minotaur grabbed her? A, she gets eaten. B, she dissolves into a golden light. C, she runs away. D, she kills the Minotaur. Multiple choice question 7. What does Percy use to defeat the monster? A, its own horn. B, a Minotaur. C, a sword. Or D, a bow and arrow? Okay, and here are the answers to the multiple choice and That's it for today, guys. Thank you so much for listening.